and the endless chain attack and ISP liability. So all of these things are problems that we've outlined in the DMCA. So I want to pose a couple of rhetorical questions, which is that what if we treated those problems, what if we treated those failings as protocol failings, right? So what if we actually say, oh, well, this is just a protocol. This stuff is vulnerable to attack, as we've demonstrated earlier. And what if we treated our lawmakers like software vendors, right? So we tell them, hey, you know, this stuff, this is a problem. And what if proof of concept code could be used to highlight DMCA protocol flaws, right? So this is how could we, you know, or could we use software to really take advantage of these flaws and show that this stuff doesn't work, that the protocols that they've outlined in the statutes are flawed. So responsible disclosure, most of you probably know this. So it requires that, you know, say the vendor releases buggy software and then a security researcher finds some sort of theoretical vulnerability, informs the vendor. The vendor chooses not to fix the bug. So the researcher winds up releasing this as a white paper, whatever, to the public saying like, hey, look, this could probably be leveraged as a problem. And then the vendor still does nothing, maybe perhaps arguing that the attack is too theoretical, that it would never work. So the researcher writes proof of concept exploit code, and then this last item I said, you know, the vendor must fix the bug. That's actually not the case. They can probably write a DMCA takedown notice and prevent the researcher from releasing this stuff. So here's the theoretical attack. We're going to imagine what happens if we amplify Project DoD versus Federici. That is, that it's not just him, but that all of the things that he highlighted, we're going to take advantage of those, but on a mass scale, right? So lots of people. I want to posit a malicious actor named Mallory, and then I'm going to throw together, just design, or maybe use a bot network of nodes that can send well-crafted DMCA takedown notices and follow-up notices to multiple ISPs against multiple users. So think of this as a sort of web crawler that goes around, finds content, creates these takedown notices, and fires them off in mass to all these ISPs. So we have a couple of requirements. One is that Mallory's identity stay hidden, and that any node that sends the takedown notices cannot be tracked back to her. This is like basic bot network principle stuff. But that the nodes themselves need to be exposed. They can't be like behind Tor or something like that, because that's statistically interesting information. So the abusive takedown notices must look like legit notices. So you can use random looking letterheads, you know, say off chillingeffects.org. You can throw together whatever you want, as long as there's statistically, and this kind of goes towards spam fighting, right? As long as they're statistically indistinguishable from real takedown notices. So then, you know, you might even put anonymous contact information on, you know, say like a prepaid cell phone or VoIP or something like that, maybe Tor access to an email account. And then when this thing sends notices, it needs to send them to all first-order ISPs. And when I say first-order ISP, I mean ISPs down at the leaf nodes. If you think about it like a tree, although it's more like a web, but if you think about it like a tree where ISPs sort of have a parent, you want to send takedown notices to all those first-order ISPs. But you also want to send them to the nth-order ISP. So you want to go up the chain so that you can do the backdooring attacks under certain conditions. That is, where the content is still up, or when it goes down and then comes back up. So so you have those two conditions to send takedown notices, and then there's a sort of side effect that's kind of interesting here, which amazingly enough Federici also highlighted, which is that you can send a takedown notice to a search engine, say Google, and get the content removed from the index as well as the cache. But the interesting thing here is that Google doesn't have a user for that content, so there is no counter notice procedure, right? So you send a takedown notice, it gets removed from the index or the cache, and then there's no user to say this was a fraudulent takedown. So you can basically remove the content from search indexes as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just let's say we'll use Gearman, right? I'll just give you an overview of what it is, but it's a distributed job processing server, and you have a bunch of clients that send a payload to a job server registered for function, foo, or whatever, And then that job server sits there and workers connect to it and say, hey, I can do job foo. Do you have anything for me? And so the workers pick it up and do the work. And so all of this scales like 1 to n at any point. And what we're going to do is sort of shim this in at the 2 connection points here, where the clients connect to the job server, the workers connect to the job server. We'll shim that through the Tor hidden service protocol. This is not like it wouldn't work out of the box, but there's an interesting project that we're working on that could make Gearman do this. So the client API is basically you can write it in whatever language you want, and then you shim it here at the arrows. It goes to the job server. You have the shim for Tor as well over here, and the workers can pick it up and they can be written in whatever you want. And then more of my fun diagrams. So we have Mallory over here with the little horns, and she has a takedown notice. There's a Tor onion network, a Gearman server, and then a bunch of zombie workers and ISPs over here. And so what's going to happen is Mallory constructs a statistically, a takedown notice that is basically the same as any other takedown notice that an ISP would receive. And Mallory fires it off through the Tor onion network, and it lands on this Gearman job server. And then workers register for that function, so they pick it up. And so both the client connection from Mallory to the job server and the connection from Gearman to the worker was obscured through the Tor onion network. And then these zombie workers essentially can take that takedown notice or the mass amounts of takedown notices that Mallory is firing off the job server and just shoot them off at the ISPs. And so, if we're working under the current regime, then ISPs are going to be shutting this stuff off until they realize, wow, we're losing a lot of users shutting this stuff off. We can no longer really do this. So the service provider can choose to follow the counter notice procedures, but then there's still the 10-day denial of service attack, and there's you have to take into account the backdooring as well. Like the ISP may not even be in control. So ultimately, I think if the volume was great enough, right, if somebody were to actually launch this type of attack, the volume was great enough that that these notices were statistically indistinguishable from real notices. So you have this really bad signal to noise ratio. That ISPs would be forced to ignore these notices. So the law becomes unenforceable. ISPs are no longer complying with takedown notices, and ultimately it needs to go back to Congress for a rewrite. And so this is what you need to do.
Yeah, how do we fix this? Here's some recommendations. The 10-day denial of service attack isn't working. This is a problem for content. The chaining attacks, if it's the same content, don't file the same DMCA takedown notice. This is a problem, and there should be liability associated with doing this. Let's see, ISP liability is also a problem, as Chris mentioned when he was talking about this. This is a lot to tie, a lot of responsibility for the ISP. Time-consuming liability, this is a problem if you have some speech that you'd like to get out there and the ISP really doesn't care. And their profit margins probably are going to way above your what you have to say.
So the future would basically look like the past, right? So we'd be back to people having to get court orders to mitigate disputes, or I'm sorry, to arbitrate disputes between to an alleged infringer and an alleged copyright holder. So the ISP is no longer in the middle of this. I'm going to skip the conclusions and we'll just go straight to questions because we're right at the end. So you have about 4 minutes for questions. You guys can grab the white paper for this at the URL here or the slides at that URL. And
I'd like to quickly comment, someday your content might be the stuff that you're getting DMCA'd with your ISP. So if you care about these issues, support EFF. Public Knowledge in Washington, D.C. is working to change legislation. They're really trying to save fair use in the DMCA. They're a fantastic 501c3 nonprofit. And, of course, support us if you can. We were also a 501c3 nonprofit because maybe you want your site hosted with us sometime. And chillingeffects.org, actually, if you ever get takedown notices or patent infringement letters, Harvard Law School and Maine School of Law and like Stanford, they might take your case and help you out with answering that, helping you with deciding if you're going to should pursue that in court or not. So questions, please.
Sure.
Is Federici really making enough money off of his books and all that he can afford all this litigation?
He appears to be independently wealthy.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay.
Yeah, so is this attacker, Federici, really making enough money off of his books and all to support all this litigation? And my answer was he appears to be independently wealthy enough to do so.
It appears, we're not really sure, but maybe he has a pro bono attorney working for him too. Hard to tell, but it's the only way that Chris's company's been able to really do this is it's the censorship resistant is us, the attorneys. And if you don't have an attorney to stand up for your stuff, it's going to cost you a lot to do this process.
Anybody else? Sure.
How different does the content have to be from takedown notes? Can you slightly alter it and place it back up, or what's the process like?
Well, you know, we've definitely seen tactics used on us and in other places for, like, say, you know, I have a friend that took a picture of somebody at a party, and someone else like used it as a sort of commentary on their site, and he sent a takedown notice for this stuff, and I was trying to encourage him, no, don't do that. And so that the person, this is no longer a problem. And so my friend asked me for advice, and I said, obey it. It's a derivative work, you know, let it go. And so he sent back to the person. He's like, well, you may not respect my copyright, but I respect your derivative work. Well, this person wrote back. He said, wow, that was refreshing, and so he took the image down because you know, he respected the derivative work.
All right, thank you very much. And Chris and I are going to be here for the remainder of this conference. We're going to also be at DEF CON, so come say hi to us. If you have some content that you might be interested in having us host on Project DoD, please contact us, and here's some contact info for us. Well, actually, at Project DoD.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.